All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that sits right at the fascinating intersection of advanced biophysics and ancient philosophy. We're looking at how a single microscopic discovery fundamentally shifted a highly skeptical scientist's entire worldview. We're exploring the Almazan Project, which is this incredible research initiative that asked a really profound question. Do the microscopic cells inside our bodies contain an innate, measurable, and perhaps even divine sense of physical balance? We're going to take a journey through some high-tech labs and complex data to find out exactly what they discovered.
So this whole thing kicks off with a pretty intense debate between two prominent scientists. On one hand, you have Dr. Massara Hussain, a leading biophotonicist who hypothesized that cells actually possess a deeply programmed innate balance. And on the other hand, you have his colleague Dr. Alistair Gregg. Now, Alistair is a staunch materialist, and he did not mince words. To him, cellular stiffness is just a mechanical reaction. Period. He argued that cellular mechanics are purely random biological processes with absolutely zero room for philosophical concepts like mizan, which is an Arabic term that translates to a universal scale or divine balance.
Now, to really grasp what they were arguing about, we first need to understand the core metric they were measuring, which is called optical stiffness. You can think of it as a living cell's internal structural rigidity. Researchers actually measure this using something called optical tweezers. And yes, that is literally what it sounds like. They use highly focused laser beams to physically grab, lift, and manipulate a living cell. It tests exactly how strongly the cell's internal architecture, its actin-myosin network, resists being squeezed by external pressure. We're talking about incredibly high-level microscopic mechanics here.
Well, the debate finally moved from pure theory into the lab when Dr. Massara ran a very specific experiment. He placed a living human skin cell into this laser trap and started applying a vibrating oscillatory laser pressure to it. And what happened next totally defied everyone's expectations. He discovered this sudden, massive spike in the cell's stiffness at exactly 7 Hz. This phenomenon quickly became known as the 7 Hz anomaly. To put that into perspective, normally a cell's stiffness hovers around 0.5 to 2 piconewtons per nanometer. Tiny, tiny numbers. But at precisely 7 Hz, that stiffness didn't just inch up, it multiplied by 10 times. It was as if the cell was actively fortifying itself. The refraction of the laser beam created what's called an oscillating fringe, revealing a perfectly symmetrical 3D balance hologram. It had a central zero point with these high-stiffness rings radiating outward, looking exactly like a universal scale. But, true to form, Alistair initially brushed the whole thing off, claiming it was just normal biological remodeling. Nothing to see here.
Alistair simply wasn't buying it. To prove this was just a physical fluke, he designed a synthetic control experiment. He wanted to show that literally any physical object of that shape would react the exact same way to the laser. So he went and created an artificial polystyrene polymer bead, engineered to have the exact same microscopic size and optical properties as the living epithelial cell. It was a perfect, synthetic duplicate.
However, when Alistair subjected his synthetic bead to the exact same laser trap, the result was entirely different. The output? Pure, random white noise. And this, right here, is the crux of the discovery. It proved that mere physical shape and volume cannot replicate the innate mechanical resonance of a living cell's actin-myosin network. The synthetic bead had no natural frequency. It completely lacked the biological code that the living cell inherently possessed. And this is where biology meets ancient linguistics in a really fascinating way. Dr. Massara began mapping these physical findings directly to phonetic concepts from the Quran regarding universal balance. The 7 Hz resonance aligns perfectly with the phonetic duration of the Arabic letter meme in the word mizan, meaning balance. He found distinct parallels between the biological data and ancient verses instructing humanity to maintain a universal scale, not to transgress limits, and not to ruin the balance. Dr. Massara was literally finding physical representations of these exact philosophical concepts right inside the cell's architecture. But what happens when this balance is pushed to the absolute brink? Think about the cells making up your own body right now. When Dr. Massara cranked up the laser pressure well beyond normal bounds, the living cell didn't just keep getting stiffer and stiffer until it snapped. Instead, it hit a precise 10 piconewton stress limit. At that exact threshold, the stiffness plateaued entirely. The cell actively initiated a self-protection mechanism to avoid breaking. It essentially said, nope, this is my absolute limit.
This finding completely shocked Dr. Gregg. To test if this was just some bizarre fluke, Alistair went back to the lab and tested this exact limit across 5 entirely different cell lines.
everything from simple fibroblasts to highly complex neurons. The result? He found the exact same 10 piconewton stress limit and self-preservation pattern in every single one of them. So we're not looking at a random biological quirk here. This is a universal cellular code programmed into life itself to prevent the transgression of physical limits.
And Dr. Misara's mapping went even further. Looking at the stiffness gradient across the whole cell, he found this perfectly uniform distribution of weight. From the cell center, the centrosome, all the way out to its outer edges, the actin-filament cross-linking was flawlessly aligned. Think of it like the perfectly balanced arms of a physical scale. The cell isn't just surviving. It's actively maintaining a mathematically beautiful equilibrium of internal weight.
The final biophysical puzzle they looked at is entropy, which is essentially the measure of disorder in a system. Under normal laser pressure, the internal order of the cell remained perfectly stable. It maintained its balance. But under excessive laser pressure, when they pushed past that innate limit, entropy reversed. The internal disorder spiked, and that delicate internal balance was ruined. The cell could no longer maintain its mandated equilibrium. This all brings the story to a massive climax at the International Biophotonics Conference. Dr. Makasara presented his findings, overlaying the biological graphs with the phonetic graphs of those ancient texts, and they matched almost perfectly. This definitive data profoundly shifted Alistair's worldview. The staunch materialist actually stood up before his peers and publicly admitted that the actin network of a living cell is a mechanical reflection of a divine balance. Talk about a total 180.
Section 1, the Al-Mizan Project, From Philosophical Theory to Medical Reality.
Because this didn't just end as a philosophical debate. This revolution birthed a very practical, modern medical initiative. And the crucial takeaway metric from their diagnostic research is 50%. The project discovered that cancer cells exhibit 50% less optical stiffness than healthy cells. Think about what that implies based on everything we've just covered. It means cancer cells have inherently lost their internal mechanical balance. They have lost their meson. By measuring a cell's optical stiffness, researchers can physically see which cells have broken their programmed equilibrium.
The researchers even stumbled upon a really intriguing, albeit highly unconventional, data point during their ongoing lab work. When they exposed the cells to specific auditory stimulations, in this case rhythmic recitations of the ancient texts, they observed a literal physical reaction. Healthy cell stiffness increased by 15%, reinforcing their balance. But simultaneously, cancer cell stiffness decreased by 5%. The cells were actually reacting mechanically to the frequencies of universal balance. Absolutely wild.
So this really demands a complete paradigm shift in how we view biology. We just can't view cells as mere bags of random protein reactions anymore. They possess innate stress limits, fair weight distribution, and active protections against entropy. They are carrying a 4.6 billion-year-old mandate to maintain equilibrium. They are, quite literally, microscopic stewards of balance. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to end on. Next time you think about the microscopic world, or look through a microscope, do you merely see cold biological mechanics, or are you witnessing a 4.6 billion-year-old, deeply programmed balance that maintains the very scale of life itself? It's something that completely redefines what it means to look at the building blocks of existence. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.